All right, so I'm having a go at this whole live streaming thing. And so here we are in my basement. I have some things I prepared earlier, which are 5 printouts of the map. So I'm going to have to go tonight and have to mask off these to prevent charring. I'm going to go then laser cut them upstairs. We'll go upstairs for that. And then I'm going to come back down here, pull them out, and then try and put them together into one giant map. For an illustration, there are a few little things I did earlier. So one nice thing I did with my software is rather than making it use a whole sheet of paper per layer of the map, it now in fact tiles them in. Let me pull this up for you here. Oh, not that button. There we go. So as you can see, this is like the main part of the map, but it now squeezes all these little extra pieces here along the side, which is super nice. So that has taken me down from 11 sheets per map to 6, which is a lot less cardboard and of this expensive semi-gloss photo paper. So yeah, these are full size, they're Super B. They are 13 by 19 inches. Thanks America for that. So the first thing to do is to take these maps and to mask off with this wonderful blue masking tape any of the lines where the laser is going to cut through, basically. If you don't mask it off, you get this nasty charring look. You may have seen it in my last video. It's not too bad on the index paper cardstock I used then. This semi-gloss gets a really nasty, like yellowish char to it. So I'm going to have to mask these all off just to make sure they look good. And so we're going to start off with that. Nathan, you ask, what did you use for that in your maps? I'm curious what you mean by what did I use in that case. The printer, this is printed on as an Epson P600. The software is completely handwritten. It's essentially a load of Python kind of strung together in a mostly successful way. A few issues here and there, but not too bad. So I'm just going to stick this masking tape pretty indiscriminately over these small pieces here because I don't need to see any of them now. All I need to see is these edges here for the alignment. Let's bring this on screen. There we go. Look at that. Now you too can see the boring process of sticking masking tape on this thing for what seems like an eternity. Don't worry, I'm not going to do this all night. Just this first one here to get it going. If you are curious, I do have some pre-made pieces here. So I did the 6th sheet earlier as a test run. Test runs are very important, obviously. And essentially, I took that sheet and I ran it through the whole process. What's nice is that sheet is only half the size of these big sheets. So it ends up using only half the cardstock. I had to cut this cardstock down from these giant, huge pieces of heavy cardboard. And so I printed those earlier. Let's pull up that camera here, actually. There we go. So here you can see some of these ones I made earlier. There's a couple of layers here on this one and a few sort of individual pieces. These will go on the bigger map later on. But they are, for now, a proof that the process worked pretty well. What is nice about those particular ones is that they are both very detailed and they've got these nice sort of sharp edges, so you can test both how well the laser cuts through when it's very detailed. There we go. Okay, I'm probably a bit quiet. I can't really help that, unfortunately, but you can probably not hear my mouth sounds that way, so that'll be nice. Okay, if you can hear me, please say something, because I cannot tell from this end. I can see the levels bouncing on the computer, that's all I can see. So that's fun. But let's bring this camera, which is actually just an iPad, as you can see right here, over, and point it down. Dun, dun, dun. So that was a fun little diversion. I definitely need to either dip that Sony camera in some form of liquid nitrogen, or I need to probably replace it with one that doesn't overheat, which is unfortunate. It's a very good photo camera. Unfortunately, it's not really cut out for live work, which is unfortunate. Okay, I'm just going to check here that noise is coming through. Oh yes, it definitely is. And now you're going to hear echo. Lovely. Okie doke. This iPad's way too close, isn't it? What can we stand it on? I wonder. Live problem solving. Be nice to have a GoPro right now, wouldn't it? Let's just pull it back a bit. How about that? Pull it back. Angle it up with this thing of Elmer's glue. How about with this drink? There we go. That's not the worst thing in the world. Apologies for the slightly shoddy setup, but that's the way these things go when it's a Sunday night and things are just ticking along. This is a very large piece of map. So the fun thing about these maps, these first 2 or 3 layers are just ridiculously, there we go, ridiculously big. And thankfully, as you get higher up, the pieces get much smaller. I've also got to remember not to push this tape down too much. This photo paper is very nice. It has a sort of like a luster semi-gloss surface. Makes the colors look lovely. The main problem with that is that it tends to, well, stick very well to everything. And this is painter's tape, not masking tape. So it's a little less good at sticking to things and it comes off without residue, which is super nice. But unfortunately, it still sticks like anything to this photo paper. So it's really, as you'll see later, kind of a pain to get it off. Okay, we need to put around all those edges because this is going to be a corner. I'm just going to stick tape sort of willy-nilly over the centerpiece. The other nice thing is big areas like this where it's solid color, again, there will be no laser lines through that. It's going to be avoided entirely by the laser. So I am not going to have to tape those up too much. The smoke, which is what makes it kind of yellow and go discolored, tends to only stick reasonably close to the actual laser lines, so you can generally avoid it if you are a couple of centimeters in. Let's see. All right. Oh, we're getting there. We're getting there all right. I do have a big roll of paper transfer tape upstairs, which is what you use for transferring stickers and vinyl cuts. I did try that earlier because it's like this wide, it's super wide, but it has this issue where it's really sticky. And in the process of getting it off of my test print, it basically didn't come off and it ripped up the photo paper instead. So that was a problem, and I ditched that idea pretty quick. Okay, let's just layer this on, get it done, because I'm sure for both you and for me, this is the most boring part of this entire process. I'll probably do 2 of these and then I will head upstairs and get some cutting going. I turned the chiller on earlier, so hopefully things are nice and cold up there now. Let's pop that there. I also turned the laser power up a little bit, so it won't mind having a few extra layers of masking tape. It will be able to deal with those just fine. It's the card that's mainly the problem. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing there. Lovely. Just stick that right over the corner. So I do need some of these features to be visible in a second, because one of the problems in my setup is I have to manually align the laser. And so these edges here, there's a sort of a little black rectangle. I'm not sure you can see it very well. Let's see, there you go, around the edge of the piece. That is my guide to line up the laser for the framing. And I really need that to be lined up, because if it cuts wrong, you get the wrong stuff, and that's really bad. All right, let's do the second one, and then just go up and cut some stuff on everyone's favorite machine, the laser cutter. Dun, 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 dun. I do need to see if 3M just sell like 30 centimeter wide rolls of this tape, because it's really good stuff. I've got like 7 rolls of it, because in general, if I need a tape to secure something, painter's tape is really nice. It tends to grip pretty well, and it never leaves residue. I'm not sure why anyone uses masking tape anymore, honestly. It just seems inferior. And so I do need more of this. Okay. Gosh. The one thing about these maps is they are pretty, but they're also really big and very detailed. I've got to say that when I started this project, I thought, how hard can it be? You know, just cut a few maps, do a few bits and bobs, it'll be fine, right? And then I very quickly learned that it is lovely and the results look beautiful, but like all good-looking things tend to do, it requires a lot of work. And I have written as much Python and scripting as I can to automate a lot of this away. But at the end of the day, I do not, well, not yet, I do not yet have a robot that can do all this for me. And thus I have to sit here and tape up stuff manually. And my goodness, do I wish there was a solution for this as well. The nice thing is the 3 hours I spent making it fit things on the same sheet is definitely well deserved, because imagine doing this twice as much and also spending twice as much cutting down all this cardstock and spending twice as much on all the paper. This photo paper is, I think, $2 a sheet, which is like, you know, okay-ish for a single sheet. When you're talking $11 for a single map, and that's before you put in the ink cost and the cost of the cardboard, it gets a little bit steep pretty quickly. Okay, so I have to be careful that I don't cover too much detail up, so I can actually orient this right in the laser cutter in a second. But I think we're going pretty well here. Okay. We're going to pop that there. All right. You see, if you're joining now, you'd have no idea that I had some terrible camera issues with overheating about 3 minutes ago. This camera's a bit dim. I need to open the aperture up a little bit, but it's not too bad at least. Okie doke. That is... Okay, that corner all looks good. The only open pieces are white space. Let's get this bit done here. Lovely. Let's get that covered up there. Let's do this. And this. And finally, not that you can see it very well on that camera, but I'm bringing it over here. One last piece. Ah, of course I get it wrong. See, it comes off pretty easily now, but trust me, in a second, when I try peeling it off, it will not be nearly as easy. All right, let's switch these cameras up, even though my control surface is gone. Let's go with that one. There we go. All right, that is 2 of these sheets masked up. So I'm now going to go upstairs and stick them in the cutter, which I'm sure is what you're all here to see. So bear with me while I go upstairs, and I'll see you in a second. All right, so you should be able to see the garage now. So I'm going to head up there. All right, so this is the garage. So I'm just going to make sure the sound's working. There we go, it's working great. Yes, so this is my... I'm going to turn it on here for you. So it's a Boss LS 1420, which just means it's 14 by 20 inches on this cutting bed here. I have a chiller. There is a big extractor, and there is a very noisy compressor which you'll hear when I start cutting a second. But we're gonna, yeah. Oh, guess what I forgot? I forgot the things to cut, so I'll be right back. It is one of those things where having a basement's lovely, but having the basement and the sort of dirty work area, which is the garage, be in separate places is a little bit annoying sometimes. Apparently I did take them. Well, 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 where did I put them? Join me on my live treasure hunt. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, they're right here. They're right here. Here we go. Okay, so first one. The first is working out what one it is. So the problem here is, let's turn this lecture light on here. So there are 5 of them. You have to go and work out which one of the 5 it is, and then load that into the cutter. So let's look at my print folder, and then just compare the images. So the nice thing is I have special guide images this thing puts out, which basically are a preview of the piece and all the cut, and verify. And this one, I think, is page 3. Yes, it's page 3. Lovely. So we'll pop that there in the cut. I will get the page 3 SVG and I will stick it into Lightburn. Now, Lightburn is the software that drives the cutter. There are many options. Probably the nicest one I've used. I've used one that just uses Inkscape. Various of the cheap Chinese cutters tend to use a variety of different bad software, but Lightburn does support a lot of those controllers, which is super nice. So you can generally just stick stuff into it and it'll work fine. Okay, so I've got my outline here in Lightburn. Check my power settings, 35 for speed, 90 for power, lovely. Send it over as page 3, there we go. Okay, so what is nice is these are networked over Wi-Fi. I can and then just go and load it in the cutter. The problem with that is there's also a run button on the computer. If you press the run button, the laser stops. So I am very, very careful to never leave this thing on, both deadlocks, interlocks turned on. So there's one interlock in the lid. If you close the lid, it will run. If you open the lid, the laser cuts out. The other one is the flow control. If there's no water pumping through, it won't run. So I leave either the lid open or the pump off if I'm turning it on but going out of the room, because I'm really scared about hitting the run one day, just firing the laser without me here. Okay, I'm going to bring the iPad over for the next. There we go. So the next step is to align the 2 up. Now, the thing is I am making my own cardstock, and as such, it is not an exact size. And so I have to basically this point here, which you can see, hold it up a little bit more, there we go, and line it up. There we are. Okay, that looks pretty good. So going to press the frame button here. Okay, so I can see visually that it's a little bit angled, so I'm going to skew it just a little that way, like that. Frame it again. Put this back on the shelf so I can do this. So I'll go that way. There we go. So yeah, this is definitely the trickiest part. And if I was a smart person, I would definitely invent a better registration system than this. Fortunately, this job is not quite long enough to spend the time doing that. I'm actually going to shift the laser a little bit towards me and set the origin point again. There we go. try that, shall we? That's terrible me. Ooh. So times like this, you have no idea what straight is when it comes to right angles, because every time I have put this in here, I have got it wrong. Every single time. The nice thing is the honeycomb here is on magnets. Ah, good. There we go. Okay, one more check. Okay, that's definitely close enough. All right. The honeycomb's on magnets, so I can shift it a little bit on top of the tray here. One last thing to do is focus the laser. It should be good from earlier. I've got a little bit of plastic. We just stick that on the head, make sure it's 2 inches up, which it definitely is. Lovely. Now turn on the compressor. This will probably ruin the audio. There we go. And then cut. Let's hit the cut button and bring the iPad over to let you watch it, shall we? There we go. Look at that. I do plan to try and stick a GoPro inside here at some point. But until then, holding an iPad up will definitely suffice, I guess. It's always fun to watch laser cutters. At the beginning, I was a little bit scared about looking at the actual laser dot, but the lids of these cutters are obviously made of wavelength of the laser. It's an infrared laser, so you can't see it anyway, but it absorbs it nonetheless. Even that said, I try not to look at the dot directly. I just try and, you've got to stay around the machine because laser cutters don't so much cut as literally evaporate the thing in front of them, and as such fire. A nasty problem with these things occasionally. So you've got to stay around. There is a fire extinguisher, if you notice, right here, for good reasons. I have thankfully not had to use it ever. I'm not sure if I've ever put a cutter on fire in my few years of cutting, but now I've got my own one, I'm sure I'll have an extra chance to do it because it's now in my garage. Thankfully the garage is mostly concrete and thus quite fire resistant, as is the machine. You can see quite a lot of the smoke it kicks up as it cuts. That is pretty much the, oh, it's having a way over time autofocus. That's the cardboard being evaporated by the laser. There is both an extractor fan at the back pulling the air out. That air is running along this silver tube here. And there is also a compressor which is pushing air down through the laser nozzle so the smoke doesn't go upside and hit the lens, because the lens inside that nozzle is arguably the key part of the system, and it's a massive pain to clean, and it's also a massive pain and expensive to replace. There goes the chiller. Just under 20 degrees Celsius, and the ideal range for the laser cutter is about 15 to 20 Celsius, so try to keep it under that level. I think we're mostly done here. Let's look at the display. Yeah, so the little blue bar at the bottom there, you can see it's about 2/3 of the way through, so there's a bit more left actually. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can stick a camera in there, it won't get too damaged. And the GoPro probably is, if by that'd be an unfortunate loss, but I can probably take it. Whereas if I put one of the nice cameras in there, then I do not want to think about what happens if that thing gets lit up a little bit. Let's try and hold this here. There we go. Cool, we're almost there. There's a slight smell of smoke in here, but not too bad. The extractor doing its job. There we go. And that's the final trace. That is mostly so I can use it to align, because the bounding box has to be on the outside, but also gives me an idea. Cool. So we're going to give it a little bit of time here to let the fumes evaporate. One I used to make is opening the cutter up straight away. Just, give it like a maybe a 10 count at least, and just make sure that it's going well. Because otherwise, you open this up and get a face full of smoke, but if you do it now, just smoke, but not too bad. Okay, that does look good. So let's come over and show this. So the key thing to a good cut is when you lift this up, see the pieces that stay on the bed? That means it's cut nice and clean all the way through. So now what I can do is I can take all those pieces, put them in a nice pile, get a piece in there to cut, and get going with that. So let's pull out this first of all. Oh, okay, that's cut really nicely, which is almost annoying because when it cuts mostly fine, you are left with a sort of a cling where you can raise up the sheet and the pieces stay roughly in place, which of course helps carrying it out. Whereas like this, you end up with it staying in place. Actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tape, I'll say painter's tape, onto this to hold them in place, just a little bit. That way I can refer to them when I get downstairs because I've got a sheet that says where all the pieces are supposed to be and what layer they're from. So rather than do this the hard way, I can do this the slightly less hard way. There we go. The one nice thing about having them all on one sheet was that you could just take the sheet and build the layer right there. So if you saw my previous video, I literally cut a sheet, I had the model here, and I built the model layer by layer as it came out of the cutter. That is not an option with this one, unfortunately. It shouldn't be too bad. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, there's so many pieces. I forgot how many pieces there were. It's like staring into the abyss. There we go. Okay, I'll get the rest manually. I kind of screwed up a little bit here by pulling it up too soon. But I was excited because it's finished. I love when things are done. There we go. All right, let's put that there. That's the one piece I pull out manually. I've got these other pieces. So the one thing about the software I did put in the software was that you can tell it the smallest piece you will accept, and then it basically makes sure that none of the pieces it cuts are smaller than that. So basically, if you don't care too much about having like all the tiny mountain peaks, you can tell the software that, and it will just give you all the big ones. So this is set to have a maximum piece size about this big. That's the maximum piece size it will make. Thankfully, this is the same size as the previous model. So when I made the scale model, which is about yay big, all those pieces were like half as big. So I was sitting here like picking them out like from underneath as well. I'll show you under there in a little bit. It was a nightmare. There was two of them to the suction holes at the bottom. Okay, what is this? Well, first around, and I'm going to guess that's page 2. Like that. Actually, no, it doesn't look like that. That's not cool. You see, a smart man would have these pages. I, as the evidence shows, am anything. Is that is lovely. All right, so we'll pop that in. Looks pretty good. We'll go back to Lightburn. We'll delete that previous page because it's done now. We'll open number 4 here. Open SVG files. So the one thing I did do for registration is that these SVG files obviously don't have a built-in dimension. When I import them, they actually come in at 1.9 meters, which is probably too big for any cutter I can certainly afford in my lifetime. And so the pictures are printed exactly 32 centimeters high. So I just tell Lightburn to scale it down to that, which is how I get the scaling lined up. So it's not rotationally right, but the scale's right. So when you get it resting perfectly, that's to that looks great. Send it over. Verify says page 4 here, and it does. Lovely. So, where the red dot pointer is. Let's see how off I am, shall we? Oh, I got that back the first time. Let's do that again to make sure. Oh yeah, that is very nice. If I do say so myself. Tiny adjustment. Oh, that was actually maybe worse. Okay. That's good. That's pretty good. All right. So, do this. Got a little checklist here. Turn on the air compressor, which is annoyingly cheap, but I'm replacing it soon. Chiller is good. We're at 17 degrees. Lovely. Begin. I'm just going to make sure it's aligned the right way around, because I just realized I've got that. Oh, I can actually be exciting. That's right on the... Yeah, I didn't get that right. I'm sorry. No, that's the way it works. Ah, well. Okay. Let's... Da-da. Here we go. You see, this is one of the cases where it's not having smell of visual, because it just smells like burnt cardboard in here now. And most of it's going outside, granted, but there are these gaps. You can see here's a little gap there, where the smoke does tend to leak out through. So it's kind of unpleasant having that odor in here, but that's why it's in the garage and not anywhere else. Okay, do I have any pieces? Yes, so while this is cutting, I'll just lay it here so you can see a little bit of it maybe. I'll show you some of the burnt pieces. Do I have these? Oh no, these are not burnt pieces. Oh, that's a shame. I must have thrown them away. I had some burnt pieces here before. I'll show you the charring, but I'll go and grab them from the kitchen later on so you can see how that looks. Go. I will say, while the lockdown did somewhat force my hand on getting a cutter, because I can no longer get to the makerspace that has one, it is kind of nice to have at home as well, I've got to say. One of my operating principles with hobbies has always been like, low effort's what matters. Like if it takes me mental effort or physical effort to go and do something, I often don't go and do it. So it's really nice to have a short walk outside the basement and just come to it, rather than having to get in the car, drive for like a good, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes at least to get downtown to the makerspace. And so avoiding all that and just going for it is super nice. I think the 3D printer was the first thing I bought in-house, but at this point, I've got most things one would want. Not a good wood shop. I've only really got a circular saw here, and I definitely do not have a mill. I think a CNC mill is my ultimate wish list item for a home, but it is big. Like, I mean, this thing is pretty big. You can see here, it sort of fits in the corner of the garage, but a mill is even bigger than this. It throws shavings everywhere, and is generally just a lot messier even than this. So one day I might have somewhere big enough to get a proper mill in the garage, but this is not that place, unfortunately. How are we doing? Let's look at the screen here. Okay, so we're 3/4 of the way done. This one's a bit simpler than the other ones. I do run a simplification on these outlines it's doing here. They come out of my program pretty complex by default. And the laser cutter really it's not worth doing them too precisely, it just sits there doing far too slow movement and trying to get every tiny nook and cranny. So they're a bit simplified, but I can probably stand simplifying them a bit more than this even. There we go, that's the final one. Okay, we'll let the fumes disperse a little bit. Okie doke. Just have a little peek in here, see if the fumes are gone. Yeah, they're mostly gone. Turn off the compressor. It's a noisy business, this laser cutting. Okay, give a little bit of a test lift. Oh yeah, that's lovely. Okay, so I'm not going to make the same mistake this time. I'm going to tape it down immediately and preserve them in place so that when we get downstairs, I have a much better idea of where they are. Let's do that. Oh, I don't know, you can go like there. There we go. All right. I mean, this is the first time I've done this. There's not really a science to it as far as I know. Let's put that there. The key thing of these tiny pieces, because, so one thing it does do is there is a separate setting for size allowed for objects, as in pieces I can glue, and then size allowed for holes in things. And the holes are allowed to be a lot smaller. And so all the lakes are generally cut out pretty well. It's mostly just the mountains that get sort of treated badly by the whole process here. I think that's pretty good. It's ready to lift out. Let's see what falls out, shall we? Oh yeah, okay, there we go. Lovely. And there's one piece left here, but I believe that's a lake. So I'm just going to put that to one side if I need it. So, quick look at here, just because it might be a little bit interesting. So you see here, there's a honeycomb. The honeycomb is only what you cut through. But under this, there is a thing called the knives, which is very exciting. It sounds far more exciting than it actually is. So the knives are the actual basic surface which you can cut on like big objects. Obviously, because the pieces I have here are very small, I don't use the knives directly because they just fall straight through. As you can see, there are pieces down there. These are the small pieces of mostly little lakes that got cut out. Now, I won't do it on camera, but one thing you've got to do is between every set of cycles, you kind of have to go through all the pieces and clean out the bottom tray. Because if you don't do that, and you let detritus accumulate down there, you end up with a nice it's a big fire hazard. All right, so I'm going to transition back downstairs onto here, and then I will be right back. There we go. All right, actually I'm going to fix the aperture on that lens quickly because it's a little bit dark. And I can bump it up a couple of notches. There we go, that's probably better. Okie dokie. So, ooh, this is hot work as well. It's warm in that carriage. Colorado has gone from winter to summer in about 2 weeks. It's kind of weird. Okay, so we've got the two pieces from upstairs. I am going to move these other not cut and taped pieces to one side briefly. And we are going to look at this bottom layer here, because this one is a bit more, there we go. Okay, so let's get the iPad back to give you a little bit of a close-up view. So I'll keep it on a wide shot mostly here. Let's see. And then if we go to, let's try an overlay. Let's see, is that gonna work? Come on, vMix, there we go, lovely. So as you can see, there is a lot of these small pieces here. And so the plan is to basically peel off this masking tape layer off of each of these small pieces and essentially look at what they are. And on the computer, I'll try and show you that later on. I have this sort of guide map of what pieces are which and which layer they go on. So I'll group them by layer, and then the big ones we can start sticking together like this and sort of having them look decent. And then the little ones we'll do later on. So let's twirl that around to keep it on here, shall we? Like that. There we go. Look at that. That's almost acceptable. Huh. Lovely. So peeling these off is a massive pain, obviously. As I said earlier, the masking tape, sorry, this is painter's tape, and it is the least sticky tape that I have available locally. It is still not that sticky, but peeling off these corners is a real pain, honestly. Once you get a hold, it's usually pretty good though. There we go. There we go. Lovely. So it's definitely coming along. Like all stickers, it's mostly a case of trying not to leave a tiny sliver behind, or that weird sort of half torn off piece that you just can't get your fingernails under. Lovely. So there we go. One piece of, I think there's like 50 pieces here, if I remember right. There's a lot of pieces, let's put it that way. One might say too many, but I would never say that. Lovely. So I'm going to be sitting here doing this for a bit, and then I'll probably call it a night, for streaming at least, because while streaming is lovely, and it is lovely to talk to all of you, I would also like to sit down and watch some TV at some point. So I thought I might finish this tonight, but given how long it took to just do these two, I'm not entirely sure if I can. Hey, we'll see how we go. I'll at least try and glue a few pieces together here on stream for you, just to give you an idea of how that bit works. Spoiler, it's not very complicated. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, as I'm looking over there occasionally. Let's see here. Oh yeah, the charring was so much worse on these. Oh, is that the charred one? Somewhere in here I have the charred one. I'll show you that later on. It is really quite nasty. Okay, let's go and try and find it. Hang on 1 second here. Let's see, let's see. That's a paper one right there. Okay. I bet you it's upstairs. I bet that's where it is. You can listen to me go upstairs. Oh, how exciting. Ah, here they are. Lovely. Bump, 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 bump. Great. So I can briefly show you this effect here. So I did tweet about this earlier. This is an example charred one. We'll bring that full screen. How about that? That one? There we go. So this is a charred one. Now, obviously the charring, half of it here is from the sides. This is because this is plywood. Plywood is a pretty common thing you use with laser cutters, I've got to say. It's not too bad, but it has this nasty black edge. Some people like it, some people don't like it. I'm a little bit, I don't know, a little bit ambivalent on it, I guess. It looks good in some situations, but it does not look good here. The edge of land is not black. That's not how this works. And also the other thing is, like, this is the thinnest plywood I could find. Like, I had to go to Home Depot. I had to pull off a giant, I think it was like a 4 by 8 foot piece of plywood, because that's the only size they had the thin plywood in. Cut it up yesterday manually in the garage with my circular saw. And even this isn't that thin. Like, all I need, I guess, is like 1 or 2 mil. This is 3 mil plywood, like 1 or 2 mil plywood. But at some point, I went with the this method here. This is the composite cardboard method. The way this one works is I go to Home Depot. I go to Office Depot, because there's a lot of depots in the US, not depots. It's very key. And I buy a ton of what they call heavy card. Is it heavy? Heavy poster board, it's called. It's about basically 1/2 mil thick cardboard. And then I sandwich 3 layers of that together, glue it down. I use spray glue this time rather than wet glue, because it makes it bend much less. And then I stick the cut stuff on top. And that looks a lot better. And what's nice is you get these nice sort of like brownish, like much more land looking edges. I think this looks much better. This is the same method I used for the original piece, which I'll just get from behind me. the prototype piece, I should say. So you can see the prototype piece is much smaller on a scale than this full-size one. But same technique here. This is 2 layers of cardboard. This is 3 layers. So it's a little bit thicker, a bit more height, looks better at full scale. I did try initially doing 4 layers. That, while in theory is the right way to scale, like this is twice as big, so in theory it should be twice as high, ended up didn't look good. It turns out these things look a lot better if you just, I don't know, like scale them at the right size. It's really weird. All right, so let's see. Got 2 pieces here. Oh, this is like, I said that these little test pieces here, they are sort of the thing I did earlier. They take only 1 sheet of paper, which is nice. Actually, only about half, like this much paper, about half as big as this. So you can crank them out pretty quickly. They're easy tests. They kind of look good, honestly. I might try and do a series of like little mini square ones like this, maybe 1 per national park, or, as is my want, because I do love national parks. But when you go full scale, of course, things scale up massively. But yeah, I do have an ongoing milling project of milling a tiny relief terrain for every US national park. But there's probably, there's plenty of other good national parks. The UK, of course, we have some fantastic ones back home. I do love them dearly. I've been to quite a lot of the New Zealand ones. I think I went to about half of them when I was there last time. And they are just stunning. Like look, Norway and New Zealand can kind of compete for best looking landscape, and then everybody else kind of comes second, in my personal opinion. That's kind of how it ends up looking. Oh, this is coming up really nicely. I've got to say, let's pull up the inlay here. They really are coming out very clean around the edges. I do like that. This prototype, this previous one here, this is actually laser printed onto cardstock, which came out surprisingly well. I laser printed it because I was like, well, I've got a color laser, I can throw card in there, it's quick and easy. But it ended up really like making the colors look good. It oversaturated them, as laser printers always do. They always oversaturate things. But it looked good. And so what I ended up doing actually is I took that color output from the printer and I went back into the original image that this printed from, and I tweaked it up to look like that. I just increased the saturation, I increased the brightness, I tweaked up the contrast. This has a bit better color representation than that does, obviously, because it's printed on a fancy inkjet, but it still looks pretty good, even without that stuff. So honestly, oh, okay, I thought I was peeling up the paper, the photo paper there for a second, but it's just very sticky for this stuff. So yeah, like honestly, like for a prototype, that thing ended up doing pretty well, I've got to say. I'm quite pleased with it. Certainly when I set out to do this, I didn't think the prototype would be the thing I excitedly post about first. I thought, well, I'll do a prototype, it will look okay-ish, and I'll then learn from that, as I always do, and try and make it better. But it ended up being nice enough that I was like, well, honestly, like, I could have stopped there and been pretty happy. In the end, I didn't, of course, I kept going. But there is a lot to be said for what you can accomplish on, like, you know, I would say the laser cutters are commodity hardware, but like some card and a laser printer can get you a long way. And in my experience, laser cutters are generally one of the first things any makerspace buys, because they tend to be, I'm not sure if they're like over exaggerated. They're very good for a lot of things. They're also like, you know, they can cut acrylic, they can cut wood, they can cut paper. They can't cut metal unless they're very powerful, and no one's getting one of those with their first laser cutter. And they tend to be pretty good. I do sometimes think some people will be better served with using a vinyl plotter or a cutter rather than an actual like laser device. But in general, laser cutters are a good like general machine tool to have, if they count as a machine tool. If I had to choose, I'd probably just have laser cutter, 3D printer, normal printer, and a mill. You can get a lot of prototyping done on those 4 machines alone. Okay, it's a bit gooey on that one. I'll try and clean it off later. These are very small and fiddly, obviously. Oh. Yeah. Ugh. There we go. There we go. Now we're getting there. But yeah, no, I do think I'm not going to stop here. I am almost certainly going to keep on going after this map. Like Breath of the Wild is a good map to start with, but I do think there's lots of potential for having these up around the house. Maybe doing these for other people, like as a side business. Not quite sure about that. Something to be said for not confusing your hobby with the business, but that said, they are very lovely, and I would like to make sure people have opportunities to either make them themselves or get them as a kit. I feel like you could ship them like this, like flat sheets cut out and have them glued at home. That would not be too difficult and kind of a fun little project of its own. I'm not sure I'd make everybody peel the tape off though. That might be a bit too much. Oh, was this delaminated? Oh no, it's not too bad. So one of the first problems I had, in case you missed the last video, these, as I mentioned, are 3 layers of cardboard stuck together. When I did it before, I just used this basic glue and I just did a zigzag over it. And the problem with that is I missed some spots. And so some bits didn't have glue, which is fine as one big sheet, because it still sticks together. But when I cut out the small pieces, some of the pieces landed exactly where there was no glue and just separated out into 3 sheets of cardboard. So that was unpleasant. Just borrow my little iPad stand here. Okay. Gosh, this is tedious. Thrilling, I don't know, television stream, whatever this is, I'm sure. But yes, I think in future I probably will mostly stick to the actual cutting and a little bit of construction, because I don't think anyone wants to watch me for, where are we at now? Oh, over an hour. Peeling masking tape. Not my idea of a video I would watch anyway. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to see if I can find a few pieces to stick together and show you how that bit works too. And then show you one of the mistakes I made earlier, because I almost screwed up in a big enough way where all my prints were unusable, because I printed these 6 sheets first off as the very first thing. Before testing them, which was my fault, honestly, I should have done a test print. But I'm running low on this fancy paper. So when I first got the printer, I bought 20 sheets of the fancy paper. I was down to 8 sheets at the start of today. This takes 6, as I mentioned earlier. And so I was like, well, I don't have many sheets left. Ordering things online, as everyone knows right now, is pretty slow. I have some new sheets coming in from B&H, but they're not here until I think Wednesday during the week. And I ordered them last Friday. So it really does take quite a while. And so there was that sense of like impending lack of supplies in some way, where I was trying to do it right the first time. But the mistake I made was, actually I can probably show this here briefly. Let's have a look, shall we? Yeah. So yeah, let's pull up this example here. Actually, I'm going to swap these cameras around too, so you can see it a bit closer. Let's go like this. Do that, do that, do that. There we go. So this is the test cut of this final method. And the mistake I made, and you can probably just about see it here. If you can see, there's little bits of white poking around from all the different contours on this. Now, what's happened there is the contours and the cut lines that I generated were perfect. They were aligned fantastically. If the laser was an infinitesimally small width. Lasers, however, are not infinitesimally small. They have a width. That width is called kerf. It's basically the size of the cut. Like imagine a saw blade. When you cut things with a saw blade, the sawdust that comes out, that's kind of like you're removing that material. With a laser, it's similar. It just ablates. It evaporates away all the material. And so this is about 0.5 millimeter. It just removes 0.5 millimeter of material from the cut. And so if you don't account for that, what you end up with is your cut is slightly wider than you expected. And so underneath, if you make the color areas match up exactly, you end up with basically nothing for this tiny little edge around underneath, because you forgot to account for the kerf. And when I rewrote the software to do this tiled layout, I totally forgot to make it account for the kerf. And so for a while I thought, okay, that's it, I'm done. I've wasted these 6 sheets, I can't reprint them. I have to wait until Wednesday to the new sheets to get here and print new stuff and waste more ink. But in the end, thankfully, I looked in Lightburn settings, and Lightburn has built-in kerf adjustment too. So I told Lightburn to adjust for a kerf of about 0.5 millimeter, and just takes the cut lines and it sort of takes them out and sort of just does that for you basically, and essentially fixes your mistake. So it means these pieces on top are slightly bigger, which is fine. The code that did keep working is the bleed. So like on the outsides of the cuts, there's extra pigment or extra printing to make sure it doesn't go in. That worked fine, that kept it in there. And so I can make them a little bit bigger, and that hides up the slightly too large white space on the piece below. That's just for this problem. For this one, I've got the fix in my code already, so the next map I make will be fixed already. No need for kerf adjustment, although I can still do it if I want to. But that was almost, I won't say ruined the weekend, but turned this weekend piece of the project into a non-weekend piece of the project. And I am quite busy during the week and often lack the mental spoons to keep going and do projects like this in the evenings. Instead, I often crash onto the sofa and just watch YouTube, which, you know, is fine. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. It's important to have some self-care time, but there is a level of, oh, I want to get this thing done, but I don't have the energy or the focus, and that can be annoying occasionally. So the weekends have been a good place to sort of spend the first half of Saturday lounging around, maybe go and get some more food, because that is a nightmare of its own self right now. And then in the evenings, sort of sitting down, just noodling around on my projects. Down here in my basement. I do love having a basement. I mentioned how much I love having a basement. I love having a basement. It's great. I've got to say, it is very fortuitous that I moved to Colorado last year, not this year, because it is nice to go from my tiny one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco to a decently sized small house here in Denver. I feel for anyone stuck in a small place right now, it is not easy times. So stay strong out there, obviously, and one day you too can hopefully have your own small workshop if you desire one. Though maybe not in the Bay Area, because look, I love San Francisco. It's a wonderful place. Beautiful place. Many of my friends live there, but my goodness, it's expensive. My goodness. When I moved to the US from London, I thought, I know, London, one of the most expensive cities in the world. What could be possibly worse? And then wanders in San Francisco, and it is just incredibly expensive. Just so expensive. I remember the CEO of the company I used to work for, she once said that when she looked at the price for the new office in San Francisco, she basically cried. I didn't quite do that with my flat when I got my first one, but I was somewhat taken aback, shall we say, by the line price. It's a nice place though. I do kind of miss Northern California. Northern California is a beautiful place. And the weather is perfect, maybe too perfect. It's always nice out there, honestly. But I do miss it a little bit. But then it snows here. I'm like, oh right, I like snow. I like having weather. And that brings me back to Colorado being, honestly, a very decent place. I did move to Colorado, I mean, not of my own volition, but like for my boyfriend's job, because he works out here. But I got to say, like, it was on my shortlist anyway. My shortlist was basically, I want to live near mountains, and I want to live somewhere that at least had a direct flight to London. And that's basically Seattle or here in Denver. And I think of it, like, both are great. I love Seattle. Seattle's maybe the most European-ish feeling city I've been to in the US. People always say New York feels European-ish. It kind of does. But I also do think that Seattle counts because like the architecture and the feel, it has a proper market in it. That's nice. So Pacific Northwest or the Rockies were both very good places to move to. In the end, I ended up here, and it's lovely out here. And I do wish I could go outside and explore the Rockies a bit more, but there's plenty of time for that in the future, I'm sure. There's a lot of campsites I've marked out. One of the fun things is quite close to Denver, actually. There is a road that is the highest road in the US. I think it's up to like 14,000 feet. It's really high. And you can just drive up there during the summer. During the winter, it's closed because of snow. But during the summer, you can just drive up there. It's great. It's it was on my list of things to take my motorbike on when it got not snowy. And then it did indeed get not snowy. But at the same time, it also got not going outy. And so hopefully once restrictions are lifted a little bit, I can go and zoom up there, as long as it's open. I want to make sure the people who maintain it have time as well. But once it's open and everyone's okay going out up that way again, it'd be lovely to go up there because I love doing extremes. I've been to the lowest point in America. I've been to the bottom of Death Valley. That was beautiful and a great trip. I first went in the middle of the night when I was visiting Vegas. That was really weird. The thing about Death Valley National Park is it's open 24/7. It's just open. You can just go whenever you want to. And I was visiting Vegas. A good friend of mine once told me to visit Vegas for exactly 47 hours and leave on hour 48. And so I was doing that. And so I'd seen a show the night before. I was kind of sitting in the hotel a bit bored. I had a rental car. I was like, you know what's close? Death Valley is pretty close. So I hopped in the car. I drove the hour or so to Death Valley. It was, oh, thank you, Katie. My t-shirt game is, look, I could wear a blue t-shirt on stream especially. Yeah, I just drove to Death Valley. I was like, yeah, cool. Let's go here in the middle of the night. Drove straight in. Like, there's no lights. You kind of just drive in. It was the middle of summer, so it was like 35 or 40 degrees Celsius at night. So I can't imagine what it's like during the day. I just got out of the car in the middle of an empty Death Valley in a totally empty car park and just sat there looking at a totally, like you could kind of, there was moonlight, you could see the valley still. It was wonderfully serene. Honestly, if you're visiting Vegas, I kind of recommend the nighttime trip to Death Valley. It's, there's a really lovely soothing quality to it. And of course, everyone else goes during the day. So there's nothing nice than having national parks majority to yourself. And I try to go off-peak times where I can, obviously, but middle of the night is often a good trick for that. I think the second time I went for an overnight stay. I camped out in the middle of the mountain range there. If you've seen the picture of all the moving rocks, that's where that is. It's up in the mountains near Death Valley. So I went up there, and that was lovely. It's a really long drive on a really badly washboarded road. Like I took my Jeep, and it was about an hour and a half of just going like this, basically, just incredibly painful on the spine. But once you get there, it's lovely. It really is. So if you're in the area and have a off-road capable vehicle, I recommend that too. I'm not sure you can do that in a rental though. I'm not sure the insurance works on that one. But yeah, and then, you know, staying there overnight was a different experience because as I often forget when I camp in deserts, because I'm not used to being near deserts. Like, as I keep telling Americans, the closest desert to where I grew up is the Sahara, and it's like a 4-hour flight away. It's not close. So having a desert close by is always really weird. And I always forget they get very cold at night. So when I camped out there, it was really nice and warm during the day. When I got there, then you go up, you climb like 6,000 feet or something like that, I think, up into the mountains to get to the campsite. And it cools off because of the elevation. And then the desert thing kicks in. And it gets really, really cold at night. And that's one of the few times I've had to literally get up in the middle of the night and get into my car and turn the heater on to get warm again. Because it was properly cold. These days I have a proper sleeping bag. I'm a bit better equipped for that stuff, but this is one of my very first camping trips to a desert. So it really was an experience, let me say. But yeah, one day I will get to my quest to visit every national park in the US. There are many of them. They are all lovely in their own ways. I've been to, I think, 12 or 13 of 60. They added one recently, so I almost lost position in that sense. But yeah, like once traveling is more opened up again, I can resume that quest. But I've been to a good number of them. I actually been to a lot of the Colorado ones. One of my first trips ever in the US when I moved here was to come. I was like sitting in San Francisco going, well, I want to go somewhere. Like, you know, I've moved to the US. Now is the time to see America because I live here now and I can get around easily and domestic flights are cheap. So I kind of sat down and was like, well, where do I want to go? What's got cheap flights and lots of national parks? I actually came to Denver. I think Denver was my second trip ever inside the US. I basically flew into Denver. I rented a car from the airport. I immediately drove south for like 5 or 6 hours to Great Sand Dunes National Park. I visited that. Well, I stayed overnight, then visited that in the morning. Then drove around to Rocky Mountains. I saw a lot of the middle of Colorado. It was lovely. I went to see the zoo when I got back to Denver. It's like a 2 or 3 day trip. It's one of my sort of standard long weekend jaunts that I'd like to do. But it was really nice. So in some ways, like that was when I first saw Colorado and kind of loved the place. It has that kind of wide open mountain feel. You just don't get many places. I'm not saying the world, because like there's plenty of places in the world, but within the US, like big mountains are kind of a rarity. Like the Rockies are the main range for height. I think Canada gets much of the better part of the mountains, honestly. But Colorado, you know, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, like there's a good range there. Obviously, Oregon and Washington State have good range going in the Cascades. California does pretty good too, with the mountains along the eastern edge there. What are they called? I forget. They're literally called White Mountains in Spanish. I forget the name, but those are lovely. Oh yes, the Sierra Nevada. I like the Sierra Nevada too. They're really pretty. The Sierra Nevada is quite thin though. That's the main problem with it. Okay, we're getting there. I said at the start, this would be a very slow process, and by gum was I right. Okay, I'm going to abandon that. I'm going to try and find a piece I can stack for you and glue together. Oh, actually, this might be one of them here. Let's see. Do those two fit together? No, they do not. Great. This is like the worst possible like jigsaw puzzle now of all time. Oh, there we go. Those two sit together. Okay, let's do those two briefly to give you a little idea of what that looks like. Here we go. All right. So I'm very basic. I have Elmer's glue, which I'm pretty sure looking at it is what we call PVA glue back in the UK. It's the weird liquidy white glue that dries pretty clear and you can peel off stuff. So like I don't need too much of a stick. So I'm just dabbing a little bit. Let's put that in the camera range there. There we go. Come on. There we go. So I'm dabbing a small amount of glue here onto a piece. And then what I did learn from the previous piece is like the edges of these are pretty, they peel up pretty easily. So I'm going to use my finger to manually dab and make sure that it's not going to squeeze out extra glue and give a good covering. This is why I'm using non-toxic glue for this too. I then need a piece of shop towel, like this one right here, to wipe my fingers on. And then the key thing here, now, as I said earlier, the alignment on this one is very precise because I did correct for the bad printing in the laser software, but it is still really a very close fit. Let's pull that up as a closer camera shot here to give you just some idea of how close this is. Huh? Let's go like that, like that, like that. There we go. So I'm going to have to manually, very carefully, so you can see there's a little cross hatching on this. I've got to by eye line that up almost perfectly and make sure none of the cross hatching or white is showing. Now it's a lot easier on these top pieces. These are the pieces at the top of the mountains because they're already white. And so if you screw up a little bit, you can hide your crimes, as Adam Savage often says, because it is white on white, and that's not too easy to see. There we go. That's a pretty good lineup. A little bit of masking tape right there. But it's the lower pieces that are all dark, where you really can't hide your crimes on very well. Let's see if it's one of those here I can fit together. Let's see. So I've got all these pieces, and I presume some of them fit together. I bet that one goes with that one. No. Okay, that was too hopeful. So one thing about the software, the algorithm does try and lay things out close to each other if it can. So it will try and keep pieces from the same layer close, but it also tries to use as much paper as possible. So I think what's got me here is these are all the tiny pieces that didn't fit on other pages, so they're not going to match very closely. Let's see if we can find a medium-sized piece on this sheet that might be one of those ones, friends. Ooh, I wonder indeed. That might be one. So I can see through the masking tape that there is a white area in the middle of this one, so I know it's not a top level piece. The question is, okay, so this is quite brown, which means it's, so the And the map here is ripped directly from the Breath of the Wild game. There is a forum that has the full sprite rips from the game. Thank you, people in the forum. You're very nice. So I just took those tiles. It comes in sort of like a few hundred tiles that the game uses to show the maps. I took the tiles, put them back into one big image. That image is, I think, 10,000 by 12,000 pixels across at full resolution. So scaled it down a bit because while I'd love that resolution, like even scaled down to 4,000 high, it prints at over 300 DPI, so it still looks great. Like I'm looking at this right now, like I'll try and get some better shots with a proper video later, but you can see a lot of tiny detail, especially like versus the laser. The laser did pretty good, but the inkjet on quality mode does a really, honestly, fantastic job of towing all the tiny, like you see every individual tree. Like that's the level I wanted here. Actually, here we go. Let me show you on this piece right here. Like you can see every, we get focus. Oh, come on. Let's try and get some focus here. There we go. You see every individual tree on these pieces, which is honestly really fun. The thing I love about maps is looking at them, right? Like building them is fun too, don't get me wrong. I love building maps, it's great. But at the end of the day, having them just on the wall, I have the big 3D printed city maps on the wall over there. They're just nice. They remind me of places. Like I'm a kind of geospatial memory person, and a big map is just nice to sit and think about. And like Breath of the Wild, which is one of the games that honestly sat with me. Like I'm not sure what it is about the game. I think it's mostly the landscape design and like the sense of place and the environment design. Like all credit to the artists on this one. They did an honestly fantastic job. But like something about it sits with me. Like I could go back into this game and know where everything is and know the place of every landmark and find my way around. And to me, like that evokes a sense of place that I want to recapture. And a map is a way of doing that. A 3D map doubly so. Like I could have just printed this out and hung it in a wall on a poster, but where's the fun in that? That's no fun at all. That's too easy. I'd be done in like 2 minutes. I just hit print and leave. And, you know, I've never been one for doing things the easy way. I think anyone who knows me can attest to that. There we go. Okay. All right. Here we go. I thought it was an easy peel bit, but it turns out it was 2 layers of masking tape. Oh. There we go. Okay, that's better. I have been told there is even less sticky tape than this, that it's yellow, because my boyfriend uses it at work on planes. And my general belief is it's good enough for planes, it's good enough for me. The main problem there, of course, is that it has to be laser safe. And so if you're not aware, laser safe means that when you cut it, it doesn't emit really toxic stuff. And there's levels of this, like cardboard and wood, very laser safe. All they emit is smoke. Obviously, do not inhale the smoke. Smoke inhalation is bad. Have some ventilation. But generally, like, it's not going to do really nasty things to you if you get a tiny whiff of it. Next is like things like foam core or foam board. Foam board is mildly toxic, so it is basically paper around a polystyrene foam core. When you burn polystyrene, it emits, surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, styrene gas and I think carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, again, don't breathe too much of it, but it's not going to kill you if you have small whiffs. Styrene is less good. Styrene can cause some slight issues with longer exposure, but again, not super toxic. So as long as you've got outside ventilation with that stuff, you're probably okay. Though I do generally wear a respirator as well when I am doing foam core cutting, because A, I like to be safe, and B, it gets rid of the really nasty smell, because styrene as a gas smells very like acrid almost. And then there are things that you just can't cut. And the biggest one of those we see in daily life is PVC, polyvinyl chloride. And the problem with PVC is the C, it has chlorine in it. And when you burn things that have PVC, the chlorine comes out. And chlorine gas is very bad, in case you weren't aware. Not only is it very toxic, and you should never have any of it near you, or even vent it outside, it's also very corrosive. So it will both hurt you, and it will hurt your laser. And so you've got to be very careful with anything in the laser cutter that it's not got chlorine in it, or don't want to emit like a nasty toxic gas. PVC obviously is the most common, so chlorine is the thing we look for most. There are other things that get emitted too, but generally you can look online and find a good set of like different maker spaces and they're like guidelines for laser cutting. I have kind of a set amount I stick to, which is basically paper, cardboard, wood, acrylic. I actually didn't do foam core until recently because I was a little bit scared of it. It's fine, again, smelly. I'm not going to use it very much. Oh, one more piece. And so, yeah, it's kind of annoying. You've got to check everything, but like the nice thing is you can just look up the MSDS, the Material Safety Data Sheet, and it always tells you what the products of combustion for the product are, because if you are a firefighter, you need to know these things. And so when you look up, for example, the MSDS for this, the blue painter's tape is like, it's fine, it's normal tape. No special precautions required. It burns and emits like basic smoke, so you're okay. You go look at PVC, it's like, it emits chlorine, be really worried. So usually the MSDS is a good place to look for stuff like this. But sometimes you just don't know. One of the fun ones is acrylic. Acrylic is maybe the best and worst material to laser cut. It's the best because it cuts super nice. Like acrylic, you basically melt away and it reseals on the edge. So every laser cut edge on acrylic is super buttery smooth and lovely. It cuts so nicely. The pieces you make with it look honestly fantastic. The main problem is acrylic gas is incredibly flammable, comparatively. Not super flammable, but like it's pretty flammable. And so if you've not got good ventilation, or like me, you forget to turn on the air assist on your laser machine, the acrylic gas goes upwards and then catches fire in the laser, and it's quite astonishing. I did do that on my first cut with this machine and then had to tear it down and clean the lens. It was all fine in the end. It was only a very small flash before I turned on the air assist. But that's one of the fun things with acrylic is like it cuts really well. It's a great material, a little bit expensive, but generally I like raiding bargain bins. If you do live in the Bay Area, Tap Plastics is where I used to go. They have a great bargain bin of like acrylic offcuts. So you just go through, it's like half price. It's fantastic. There's one near here, but they're closed right now due to COVID-19. So I'll go and raid their bargain bin afterwards. But it's a great material to cut with. It's just, it's a pain to cut. Like, it's super thick. I was initially considering getting a smaller cutter than the one you just saw. And the first time around, I was like, get one of those like desktop ones. What's it? The Glowforge I was looking at. But then, first of all, the Glowforge is not super powerful. It's like 45 watts at most. And the 45 watt machine, by the way, costs more than that machine out there does. And secondly, it's not got a lot of Z spacing. Like there's only like 2 inches of space. So like one thing I want to do is engrave the names of spices onto my spice jars. And you couldn't fit under its laser. And also it's not got great ventilation. So in terms of cutting acrylic, cutting big things, having extra power, like that's a 70 watt laser out there. Going for the big cutter, I think was the right call, even if it did arrive in a crate. And the initial plan was to bring it down and put it over in that corner behind me. When we tried to lift it, that plan quickly changed to, it'll be fine in the garage. And honestly, that has proved to be the right choice because I kind of forgot how much the smoke leaks out of it, but like if it was running in here, even with good extraction, it'd make the whole house stink of smoke. So garage is the right place for it for now. It's a bit of a pain going up and downstairs for that thing, but I can send most of the commands. I can send all the files and stuff over the network from my machine. It's plugged into Ethernet up there. So mostly what I do is I can print things down here. I can then like prepare them on the computer and like, lay out the cuts, that kind of stuff, and then send them upstairs, turn on the extraction, run the job, let it extract a bit more, and close it all down and be done in like 5-10 minutes. So that's really nice. And it's sort of running up and downstairs, especially at elevation, really gets your calories in for the day. So that helps too. Okay. So this does not look like it's got any more big pieces. I'm going to change, let's see if we can find one over here before I call it a night. And then I will go over and sit on the sofa instead and do this while watching some RimWorld streamers probably. Okay, now what here looks like it's going to be a bit I can glue together. Well, that's part of the volcano. I recognize that. Ah, here you go. Okay, there we go. So if you've not played Breath of the Wild, one of the nice things they have is it's very deliberate, I think, almost certainly. Each corner of the map has a very distinct like biome almost. And you can kind of see it here actually. I'll put this map in front of the thing. So like you have, in the top right corner here, you have the volcano. You down here, you have sort of like a hilly, watery area. You have a sort of snowy, cold, mountainous area. Then you have a desert with mountains with snow on them over here. And it's super nice because like they're all very different. And obviously there's gameplay reasons. Like each area is gated by a different gameplay item. But also it's this nice kind of like feeling of like, oh, and now I'm in the hot like volcano area. And it's kind of fun to go between them. And what's even better is when you sit there and look out over the landscape, you can just look and see what is in your sight line and know immediately where you are. Because each of those different landscapes is like designed to look very different. So you have this immediate obvious sight line, like, oh, I can tell like I'm here because I can see the mountains over there with snow on them and I can see the volcano over here. And that's honestly really nice to see. And so whenever I started doing these, I sort of focused on those sight lines, those landmarks as the very first thing, because to me those are the things I remember the most. Okay, so I'm going to pull out this volcano here and glue that together because I think I've got most of the pieces here, all but one it looks like. So see here, like these are, you can't really see, but like just about through the blue you can see that would actually lay on top of here. So once I finish peeling it, we'll glue those together. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. But yeah, so one fun thing I tried is I took the color scheme that they use in Breath of the Wild, because it's colored by height basically. It's kind of a brown to white color ramp. And I then took the local area, I took the Rockies, and I applied it to the local landscape. I was trying to get something that looked like this for the local area. Not quite sure it's going to work, I've got to say. It looks okay. It's obviously not done nearly as nicely as the art style is in the game, but there is definitely potential there for a Breath of the Wild visual style applied to any area on Earth, which would be very fun if I can make it work. So that is kind of my, so here, I almost did it. So I almost pulled up that corner and pulled the photo backing off the cardboard there, but thankfully I realized just in time. So yeah, so I'm gonna try that. The other obvious answer is historical maps. I've been trying to pull old USGS maps of the area, plenty of those in the US, and old Ordnance Survey maps in the UK, the Explorer and Land Ranger style maps if you've seen them, and apply those to common places. The UK ones are a bit nicer because they're a bit bigger scale. Like you can fit the whole, like most of the Lake District in one map. The USGS ones tend to be pretty small. They're like almost like quadrangles of like, oh, it's like a degree by a degree, like of latitude, longitude. But they're all right, and they still have that kind of nice oldie-timey look to them. So I think that might be my first attempt before I try and like theme maps that look like Breath of the Wild. Because it works well here, but I'm not sure it work well at scale on like terrain. And doing roads and stuff is difficult. All right, so here I have my base piece of my volcano. Let's switch the cameras to pull that one big and make me tiny. We go this one, we do this one, we do this one. There we go. So this is the base piece of the volcano. There's a bit of blue masking tape here, but the cross hatching means this will be underneath, so I'm not going to worry too much about that particular piece. So first of all, oh, there's a little bit of masking tape right there. There we go. Okay, test fit, make sure it's the right piece. It definitely is. So what's nice about this piece is you can see the lava rivers line up. So you know exactly when you've got it lined up just perfectly, which is super handy. The more nondescript terrain is much harder to line up for that reason. Okay, put a little bit of glue here. There we go. Just dab it in. If you put too much in and you squeeze it down, the glue comes out the sides. Just looks unpleasant. What I do not want is glue spilling all over my model and making it look weird. Spread it around my finger a little bit, make it a nice little layer. There we go. And then let's try and place it very precisely. The other nice thing about using PVA glue is that you have some movement before it sets. Like spray glue, if it's on, it's tacked in. Whereas this stuff, you can wiggle it and skew it, there we go, until it's just right, like that. and it lines up. And you know, it takes a bit longer to dry, probably about an hour or so, but once it's on there, it holds pretty good. And so you can just leave it in place and then do the next piece. So you see here, another piece. That's going to fit there. Just double check that. Yes, that looks lovely. And again, we've got some lava rivers here, which is going to be very handy for lining it up. So a bit more glue on this one. It's a bit bigger piece. Tiny dab there. There we go. Lovely. All right. Spread it around, make sure we've got good coverage. I'm not too worried about getting holes in it this time. I'm not cutting through these, so I'm not going to have like pieces fall off. But I do want to make sure it has a good grip because it's going to hang on the wall. It's going to have a decent amount of force exerted on it as it sits there. There we go. Lovely. All right. And there we have 3 levels of it done. So it's a lot more of this, obviously. Essentially, I'm just going to sit here and do lots more of this. And it's going to be a long time, probably, but that's fine. But I'm going to call it a night there. Thank you for watching. I hope it was somewhat informative. I'll try and do more of these in the future. I probably will pre-peel and pre-mask the pieces, so it's more like watch me do a fun jigsaw rather than watch me peel tape for 3 hours. But yeah, hope you have a nice night, and I will see you next time. See ya.